All right, let's talk the top three places that I would go as a woman if I'm going abroad for long term. Long term, all right? Now, this is a hot topic right now. Who isn't talking about traveling abroad or more importantly, Black women moving abroad more fixed, more permanently, like leaving the United States? And this is something that I'm only inspired to talk about. I've done a lot of research on this, but yesterday I was talking to somebody that lives in the UK and I was explaining my thought process of, just some different stuff. And they're like, oh, wow, you know a lot about this. And it was like, yeah, I guess I do. So instead of me taking it for granted, I'm going to put it in a video here and maybe it'll help somebody. So I'm kind of going to do geographical locations and kind of mention where I might go in those areas. So first, Europe. If you're interested in going to Europe as a Black woman, as a woman in general, um, I really love Portugal. I know Portugal is really popular, but Portugal is actually great. It was so here. Let me give you the disclaimer. I never really wanted to go to Europe. I was always interested in going to countries where people that look like me are the majority. Um, and I've always been like that since my youth. But Portugal surprised me and I think it surprises a lot of people, which is why it is so popular. So I went in 2023 for an event that was there, a concert event. And um, while there, it just was so beautiful. So I'm originally from California, and from Lisbon to the southern coast, the Silver Coast, it really reminds me a lot of Southern California in terms of the terrain. There's wineries, to like the orange groves and yards and stuff like that, or farms. The cobblestone streets and all that is not like California, but the bridge in Lisbon is very similar to like the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay, but you have all the Southern California temperatures. And then if you take a bus or a train from Lisbon down to the Silver Coast to the Algarve, it's very similar to me to like driving through Temecula wine country and that sort of thing. So I really, really was pleasantly surprised. Now, it's a slower pace and it's a really safe country. So walking around at night, even though like obviously be cautious regardless, but walking around at night as a woman of color, um, I went with one other female friend and not ever once did I feel like we had to like watch over our shoulder, watch our back. It felt really, really safe. And especially when we got to the southern coast, it's even quieter than the city. The city was quiet at night, but Lisbon was quiet at night. But leaving Lisbon and going down to the Algarve um, was really nice and really quiet and really peaceful. Um, and I kind of joke that like love is in the air in the southern coast because it just has this like bubbly, at least in the summertime, it has this bubbly like family and I don't know, it's like this soft wooing of like at least I felt stay a while, have a couple kids, get married, have a couple kids, stay a while. Like it just feels like that. Like it just I don't know how to explain it. But it just feels like this very beautiful, things close at a certain time so you can get home to your families, even on the weekends. Like I don't know. I just want to say like priorities are right there. That's how it feels. And it's also just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't think anybody's underselling it when you listen to somebody saying that it's great. Now, bureaucracy wise, and so this is still my Europe. I'm going to give you Europe. I'm going to talk Africa, and then I'm going to talk South America slash the Caribbean ish. Okay. So give you some options. So the thing about Portugal is bureaucracy in terms of government, it keeps changing um, the rules. So originally you could get a visa. There's a D7 visa, a D8 visa, or you could do a student visa. One is ideal for retirement, one is good for digital nomads, and another one is good if you want to go as a student, but you're not able to work the same way with on a student visa. At least not a Portuguese official job. I guess you could still do like your at-home job in the States, or like if you have freelance income or something like that, you probably could still do that as a student. So you could get the visa to stay longer in the country while also working your American or your UK, some other foreign currency position and get into the country that way. But eventually you would have to end the student visa and cross over to something else if you want to be there more permanently fixed long term. So there's that option. The D7 and D8, you can look those up if you want to know about those. But the point is, the rules for these things keep changing, especially in terms of long term residency, which is why some people who have moved to Portugal are now no longer perhaps considering Portugal as a long term option for them, even if they've been there, 2, 3, 4 years. Some people went to Portugal a while ago, so they already got their residency, but they changed it from 5 years. Then you could apply for permanent residency. Now it's 10, and that's a recent change. There's also the requirement change now of being able to speak the language. So you need to have a certain certificate level passing of Portuguese. I don't know how strictly that's going to be enforced when you apply for residency or not, but for me, the 10 years is not quite really an option unless I marry somebody from Portugal. I don't see myself as a single woman living in Portugal for 10 years. I plan to be married, I plan to have kids, and, unless he's Portuguese, that kind of doesn't work for me. But if you got married, then it would expedite that process anyway. You know what I mean? So there's all of that. Um, so yeah, there's that. Um, Another thing that you can do for Europe is, so I was actually looking at this myself. Now, there's some countries, a part of the Schengen zone, which are the EU countries that are, yeah, a part of the EU. So they're not a part, the countries who are not in the EU anymore are like England, Scotland, Ireland, I think. Um, there's a few, Montenegro. Um, I'm blanking on the others, but there's a few other that are like European, but they're not actually a part of the EU. So the thing is, if you wanted to just go on a tourist visa and just kind of hop around Europe, so those kind of parameters you need to kind of pay attention, but I'm going to give you some ideas. So you could go, for example, to Portugal or Spain for 3 months, 90 days, and then you need to leave. And when you leave, you can't return for another 180 days on a on a tourist visa. So you can go for 90 days on your US passport, tourist, no visa, like on upon arrival tourist visa thing, right? Like you don't pay for it. You can just come for 90 days because you have a US passport. When those 90 days expire, you have to leave that country for 180 days. All right. And the thing is, I don't believe you can go to another Xinjiang country. Somebody correct me if I'm not understanding that correctly. But I don't think you can go to another country that's a part of the union for 180 days. So 180 days, I think, is like 6 months or close to 6 months. So something you could do if you wanted to really leave and like go be in Europe, you could go to like a Spain or Portugal for 3 months, and then you could go to like an Ireland, which I believe you can go to Ireland on a US passport for 6 months. You can definitely go to England on a US passport for 6 months and Scotland for 6 months. So those are some options for you. And because they're officially not a part of the EU, you could leave a Spain or Portugal or Switzerland or whatever other country you're a part of the EU and that you were traveling to, and you could go to like in England for 6 months. That would give you 9 months. So let's say you're in Lisbon, and then from Lisbon, you go to London or Manchester or Edinburgh or Glasgow or Dublin or um, Belfast. You could go to somewhere like that, and then you could be in those places for 6 months. So that would give you 9 months on the calendar year. Now, the last 3 months, so if you do 6 months in England, technically, your 180 days will have lapsed and you could go back to a Portugal for the last 3 months of the year. And that would give you a whole full year in Europe, technically. Or you could go to Spain for 3 months, right? But now here's the thing with the caveat with this plan, right? Because when I thought about it, I was like, that could work because Lisbon and London are really not that far. The flights are super inexpensive. And, whatever, like you could probably make that happen. They speak English in England, and then when your 6 months are up, you can go to, the south of Paris for 3 months, or you can go back to Lisbon, or you can go to Portugal, or Spain, or pick one. Okay. Anybody else in the EU that you can go to for 90 days. Mouthful. But the only thing about this is they're starting to try to crack down on this a little bit more. So if they kind of if you get flagged as like this type of country hopper like that, you could potentially get flagged and kind of get banned because it's kind of now people do it all the time. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, it happens. But it can kind of it's not illegal, but again, it's something so technically it's not illegal. Remember that. But it is something that is not sort of it's not really encouraged. Okay? It's not really encouraged. And that's probably mainly for like tax purposes, like either apply for a visa so we know, where you're going to be instead of like trying to play the system. I feel like it's something like that. Or it could just be like controlling people like, hey, no, we don't want you coming in and out like that. But technically on the books, like if you're a tourist, you're a tourist, you're a tourist. You know what I mean? So, something that sometimes people can do, for example, Montenegro is a country that is in that region of the world, but it's not a part of the EU. And I don't believe there are currently any time limits on US passport citizens going there. So I think you can actually be in Montenegro for up to a year with a US passport. Now that may change, but as of right now, I think that's the case. Look it up and you can verify whenever you're watching this. So something you could do potentially to kind of like shift things a little bit that might actually work in your favor is instead of after those 6 months in Ireland and England or Scotland, you could probably go to like Turkey, Istanbul, or you could probably go to like Montenegro for 3 months or something like that and kind of offset it so it doesn't look like you're going right back into the EU for another 3 months. So that could be something you could do. You can stay in Montenegro more long term. A lot of people love Turkey. A lot of people love Istanbul. A lot of Black women have had really positive experiences there. And so perhaps you can go there, kind of reset for a little while, experience, explore, and then kind of go back to your European tour. Um, Another thing that sometimes people do is they might do a month in one place, a month in another place, a month in another place. But just know like that month in those different places, if it's an EU country, it's still going to be a total of 90 days because it's a Schengen zone. So at some point, you're still going to have to leave for those 6 months. Now, maybe you leave for the 6 months after being in a Schengen zone and you go to Montenegro for 6 months, you know? Then that would be less of a red flag, I feel like. So there's ways you can kind of work around that for Europe. And that's all without applying for, you know, a more fixed visa in some of these places. Now, another thing that I think is really exciting. So that's my take on Europe and how you can do Europe without a visa, and just kind of on tourist vibes. But again, you're going to have your money, you're going to have your income, you're going to have your laptop or however you're making your money online. But it is possible and it is doable. And I feel like that's why you see so many influencers going to Turkey. I don't find so many people go to Montenegro, but a lot of people do end up going to Turkey because Turkey is kind of like it's inexpensive, it's interesting. A lot of brown people have really great experiences there. And I feel like a lot of the people that you follow who've traveled and done the Europe thing, at some point they go to Turkey, and that's probably why. Okay. Um, so that's Europe. And if I was planning to go to Europe, I will say this as well. I studied Portuguese for the majority of my undergrad career. So Portuguese for me is really a heart. It's like something I genuinely love. I have friends that would rather go to Spain. You may rather go to France. Pick your fancy. Okay. But for me, even though Portugal are for real the colonizers, okay, let's not erase that. We can't erase it. Um, Even when I did a walking tour in Glasgow, Scotland, on the walking tour, one of the guys had mentioned how Scotland is just now starting to really embrace their involvement in the slave trade. Glasgow actually was a place, Loch Lomond and those different areas in Scotland were places where they built ships. Yes, the ships that probably carried your ancestors across the transatlantic. Um, a lot of Scottish merchants had farms. I would call them plantations, but they call them farms. When I was walking around Glasgow, we went to a particular area called Merchant Square. And Merchant Square, highly recommend the tour, by the way. But Merchant Square, there are streets named after these people who, in today's terms, would have been considered multimillionaires for their involvement in their farms in the new world of America. And when you go to Scotland, they don't really have a lot of corn products, which is very interesting. This Californian girl was looking for her corn tortillas because I was trying to make tacos and some Mexican food for friends there that had never tried that before. Oh, and by the way, like grits not available because it's a corn product. Polenta not available because it's a corn product. So also just like Southern soul food classics like shrimp and grits and stuff like that, you're not gonna find it, honey. So if you are interested in going to some of those parts of the world, if you love your shrimp and grits or you want to like cook some southern classic and favorites for people, cornbread, like that stuff is just not available. Okay. So people might ask you to like pack it in your suitcase and bring it with you if you go visit them because there's just certain things you can't get over there. And I was trying to like cook certain American things for people and I couldn't do it. So I think there was like I found there was like one Mexican restaurant in like on the outside of Glasgow that was like authentic, but I never found it and I never made it there. So there you go. But anyway, so that's that. Let me see. What else was I about to tell you? I was about to tell y'all something about Europe. I can't remember. It escapes me, but it's possible is the point. So that's my European thing. I would choose Portugal because I love the language, the culture, the environment aesthetically kind of reminds me of home, and so it feels familiar. And then I absolutely love the language. There's a heavy African descendant population there because Portugal are the colonizers, just like France. You know, there's people from Congo there and stuff like that. So the babies of the diaspora that speak these colonizers' languages still, you know, you have your Angolans, your Cape Verdeans, all of that. So you do see brown people, especially in Lisbon. So that's nice as well. So yeah, anyway, that would be my choice. Next, Africa. So this is a little bit biased again because I love Portuguese. So Cape Verde, actually, and I feel like Cape Verde is a sleeper. A lot of people think about going to Kenya. I hear great things about Kigali and Rwanda. I hear great things about South Africa. There are people that love going to Ghana as well. And I'm trying to think of what else. A lot of people like to go to Nigeria for Dirty December, but I don't know too many people that are moving back and relocating to Nigeria. But definitely Ghana is one, Rwanda is one, Kenya for sure, um, South Africa. Yeah. And so some of the countries that I personally would be interested in, I think Ethiopia is super interesting as a place to live and go to and explore, plus all the countries I just mentioned because they're popular for a reason. And then I personally, because of my Portuguese, I have always paid attention to Angola and Cape Verde. I would love to go to Angola, but I literally have researched so much to try to figure out how can an American US citizen go to Angola for like a short or a long-term stay, and I cannot find any information online. I cannot figure it out. So Cape Verde, though, clock it. So Cape Verde, if you like island life, okay, I think Cabo Verde is a great option. Cabo Verde is a group of 7 islands that's off the west coast of Africa. The biggest, I think, is Praia or Santiago. I can't remember right now. Or Praia's in Santiago or Santiago's in Praia. One of them. I can't remember right now. Don't come for me, Cape Verdeans. I love y'all, okay? Um, I just don't know the country that well yet. Yeah, so I would pick Cabo Verde. Now, Cabo Verde, or in Brazilian Portuguese, Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde. But Cabo Verde is um, a place where the Portuguese would bring people to from the west coast of Africa, plus whoever was probably already there. And there's a lot of mixtura. There's a lot of mixing that happened on those islands of Portuguese mixing with Africans, period. And so you have the range of different colors, creeds, all the things. Like when you think about like a New Orleans Creole melting pot, think Cabo Verde for Africa. That's Cabo Verde. And you have everybody. You have every color, every hair type, every hair texture, every eye color, everything in Cabo Verde. And they have great music, extremely talented people, great culture, great food. If you like island life, you're gonna get your coconuts, you're gonna get all of your like tropical everything, beach culture, laid back. And then they also have one of the more stable like infrastructure slash economies out of a lot of countries in the west coast of Africa. There are a lot that have stable economies, but Cabo Verde is definitely one. And then because of their strong ties with Portugal, a lot of the infrastructure and at least the capital city, and also one of the vacation destinations as well. I think Praia, Santiago, those are the ones I'm remembering. Um, their infrastructure, how the homes and stuff are built, are very European. So if you've ever been to Portugal or if you like Portugal, you're going to get the same kind of style of homes in Cabo Verde. Maybe even actually a little bit more space. I mean, it's an island, so not that much more space, but a little bit more space. And then again, it's a cluster of different islands. So I have always been interested in Cabo Verde. As a US passport carrier, I think you can go there and you can apply for a visa upon arrival. I want to say it's like 30, $40, something like that, maybe 60. I don't remember, but it's very inexpensive. And I believe that allows you to stay for 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. But it's easy to extend. And they don't have an official, last time I checked, they didn't have an official digital nomad visa, but it was something of topic of concern. Like, it's something that government is like considering. I guess people are trying to push for them to do something. And then also Cabo Verde is very, I feel like I don't want to let out a good secret, but if you decide to invest, you get expedited for a permanent residency, which I believe you only need to have for like a couple years. It's like 3 or 5, and then you can apply for long-term permanent citizenship with them. And to invest, you can buy real estate or buy land or something like that. And we're talking properties that are anywhere from like 50, 80 50 G's, 80 G's US, 100 G's US, and again, somebody coming from California, it's like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me I could get a host? And then when you get residency and you get access to the country more as a permanent person, you also they are a part of a particular African Union that is a part of a bunch of different countries from the west coast of Africa are a part of this union. The name of it escapes me right now, but basically it's like visa-free travel between all these different countries. So Ghana, Nigeria, a lot of different countries on the west coast of Africa. I'm pretty sure Angola is a part of it. Um, Mali, I think Mali recently exited, but they were a part of it. Um, I can't think of the others right now, but a bunch of countries on the west coast of Africa. So when you become a resident of Cape Verde or even a permanent citizen, you get access. The whole west coast of Africa opens up for you, which I think is dope because the US passport allows you to go to those countries too, but with more restrictions. Okay. So Cape Verde, I think, is a wonderful option. I think if you want a little bit more European style living, um, like European African style living, I should say it like that. So you're going to get some of the European comforts in terms of like, how your home is built. And like, Angola honestly is kind of the same way. Like, yeah, anyway, but you're going to get some of the things that you're used to seeing and experiencing in Europe, but you're going to get it in Africa with all the perks of an African culture, with all the perks of a Caribbean, like a island life as well. Okay, so I think it's a slam dunk. And so that's something that I would encourage people to look more into as well. Um, Let me see. What else would I say about the continent of Africa as options? Well, I gave y'all some other options. I mentioned Rwanda's popular, South Africa is popular, Kenya's popular. Some people like Mauritius. Some people go to Mauritius and they don't like it because they find that it's not as Black folk friendly. Um, but go see for yourself and then you let me know. All right. Okay. Now moving to back to the Western side of the world. So maybe you want to be a global hopper and you want to go to Spain and then your 3 months is up and you're like, dang, I want to go back to the US. What else? What else can we do? I just thought about this right now, popped in my head. Canada. Canada's also an option. I think you can go for 6 months in Canada with a US passport. Hopefully that hasn't changed. I haven't checked. Don't quote me on that one, but Canada's an option. But anyway, that wasn't what I was gonna say. I've been looking also, I love the West Indies. I love the Caribbean. So I have looked at all the Caribbean islands. I've been to a lot of them. I love it. Yeah. So I could talk to you about the welcome stamp in Barbados. You pay $2,000. You get to go there for a year and you could get to extend. Barbados is an absolutely beautiful place. 10 out of 10 recommend, will always recommend. It is pretty much a second home for me. Love it. Trinidad and Tobago is another great place. Very different than Barbados, but the food is awesome. Culture's great. Soca music. It's easy to get addicted. Um, Let me see. There's so many. St. Lucia, Grenada. Like I could go on and on, but none of those. I'm going to mention actually the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay, U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, the reason why the U.S. Virgin Islands is very attractive to me is because it is a U.S. territory, so you don't need any paperwork. You don't even need your passport. Now, the downside about the U.S. Virgin Islands is that price wise, it's especially somebody coming from California, New York, Seattle, Washington, D.C., USVI is going to be very comparable to those pricing. Plus, if you're used to Caribbean life, you're going to have all the like inflation on your groceries and all the things. So you're going to have kind of premium housing. But again, if you're coming from some of those more expensive markets, it's not going to be more expensive, it's going to be kind of the same, except groceries. That's the only thing that, like, housing is going to be the same as like a California, Seattle, etc. But a little the same and a little bit less, but basically the same. I don't think you're going to be paying $5,000 a month for something, but you could. That's what you just have to know about the USVI. And then food is the main thing as well. So you kind of learn, and then this is another thing about the West Indies and the Caribbean. You change your food. When you live an island life, you have to adjust. Everything, it's the US, so everything is available to you, but it depends on how much you want to pay. That's just what it boils down to. And I talked to a woman who lives in the USVI maybe a month ago, and she was telling me how Tony Satcherin's, the seasoning that we like to use on stuff, it was like something ridiculous on the island. So instead, like over $10, $12. So instead of her buying it on the island, she said when someone came to visit her, she was like, "Hey, bring me a bottle of Tony's." Because it's like $3 here, $2 here, right? So you have that imported tax, and you just pay it up front. Because the other thing about the USVI, I'm giving y'all a lot of information, so I probably should have broke this up. But the other thing about the USVI is that there is no tax. So everything is sort of as is as price. So at least it's 12, whatever it says it is, that's what it is. It's not, you're not going to get to the counter and it's $12.75. If it says $12, it's $12. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. But that import tax is real. And honestly, that's going to be true for any West Indian nation that you go to, any Caribbean nation that you go to, any CARICOM nation that you go to. It's going to have that kind of inflated pricing, except if you eat off the land or you eat local. And that sounds like, oh, a win-win, right? Like you're in the tropics, everything grows here. Yes, but sometimes there's a shortage of farmers. And then I actually remember taking a class in undergrad where the countries that do have a decent farming population, what happens is, here's capitalism for you. What happens is they sell that stuff to somewhere like the US or Canada, and then I don't know why, they end up buying back from those countries. And so sometimes the stuff on the shelf could be from neighboring islands that they bought back from a US, a Canada, which makes no sense. But that's the reality in the world that a lot of elected officials in those countries are working to change. And that's why we see a lot of those countries, trying to strengthen their relations with countries in Africa, so that they can kind of cut out this crazy middleman thing that's been going on. So USVI, I think is a great option. You get to completely slash all of your paperwork. Puerto Rico is also a great option for that reason as well. You get to get rid of all of the visa paperwork. Puerto Rico is going to be a little bit less than the USVI. It just kind of, they speak Spanish, USVI speaks English. Kind of pick what you want if you like island life. I think those could be really great options for people who just want to get off of the mainland and give themselves another reality lived lifestyle experience without, having to go to Europe or having to go to Cape Verde or having to go to Ghana or wherever. Like, I think you have to be ready for that. And until you're ready for that, if you just want to get away, I think that's why Mexico is really appealing for a lot of people because you might be coming from California and, Mexico City or one of these other countries is like really easy to get to. When you get there, it's really inexpensive to live. A lot of people are familiar with Mexican food. Maybe you study Spanish in high school, so you feel like, okay, Mexico. But I think don't sleep on Puerto Rico. Don't sleep on the USVI. You're not going to save money in the USVI or in Puerto Rico the way you would in Mexico. Even if you were to go to Cabo or Cancun, like it's still going to be cheaper than Puerto Rico and USVI. So that's something to keep in mind. And there, I just mentioned another one, Puerto Rico. So, I mean, excuse me, Mexico. And even if you want tropical, more like, kind of island Caribbean lifestyle, you could try like a Cancun or Cabo. One of them is on the Caribbean seaside. That's the one I'm talking about. All right. So there's that. And lastly, I'll mention South America. I had to take a breath because that's a lot. So that's my like part one of like this Western hemisphere, the America side. USVI, I think, is another one that's a great sleeper for people. If you just want to, again, get off the mainland, there's tax breaks. That's a whole nother video. But if you were to set up a business in the USVI, like let's say you're coming from California and you want to change your domicile from California to the USVI, there are a lot of wonderful business tax break benefits for doing that, but there are a little bit of rules. And so you have to kind of it would be wise to call someone on the island to help walk you through how to properly set up your business. But you get the benefit of it being a US American business. You will pay federal taxes, but that's it. So it's like, that's lodged in the back of my head. Like, that's something I need to do. And a lot of people, when they move abroad and they are looking to move abroad more permanently, they will change their domicile to a Delaware, a Florida, a Texas, a Nevada, one of the states that doesn't have state tax. What's the other one? Washington State, I think, doesn't have state tax. So sometimes people will change their domicile to one of those places, and that just is basically your permanent residency where you vote there. You have a permanent address there. And a lot of times people do that for the tax breaks because when you're living abroad, you don't want to be, a lot of people don't want to have to be dealing with California taxes or, that kind of thing. All right. So USVI is also really great for all of those reasons, even though you might pay a little bit more for your housing and for food. Um, but again, if you like the Caribbean, like I do, I think it's a great option. Instead of the $2,000 you would spend on the Barbados welcome stamp, plus whatever you're going to pay for housing, plus the inflated prices you're going to pay for food in Barbados, you could take all that money and go to the USVI. All right. So there's that. Um, Let me know if y'all want me to make a USVI video because there's also three different main islands that people live on in the USVI, and I can go into all that and break that down. So if you want to know more, holler, let me know. And then the last place I wanted to mention is, guess what? Another Portuguese speaking country, Brazil. And I love Brazil. Brazil has a special place in my heart, always will, because of the language. Brazil can be another great option. You can go to Brazil with a US passport for 90 days with the ability to extend for a total of 6 months. Yeah, I think it's with a total of 6 months you can extend. And then you would need to leave and then come back, technically. You may be able to extend past 6 months. It seems like a little less rigid there, but the point is you can go for 90 days on a tourist visa, but then you need to, before your 90 days eclipse, you need to go to a police station. Now they're called the federal police, so it kind of sounds more serious, but that's their police station. And when you go to the federal police, that's where you can extend. All right. And you can extend for another 3 months, which would give you 6 months in the country. Um, there may be options for you to like apply for a language school, which would allow you to apply for a student visa without having to enroll in a university or try to go get a master's or a PhD or a doctorate or whatever level you're at. And you're going to need to know some Portuguese in Brazil. So let's say you go for like 6 months, you could potentially extend for a year or a year and a half by like going to enroll in a language school in Salvador or Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo or Curitiba or I don't know, wherever you find yourself, Brasilia, wherever you find yourself, uh, Paraíba or João Pessoa or Fortaleza, wherever you find yourself. And you can apply at a language school there and get a visa, a student visa through that. And sometimes the language schools are through universities, sometimes they're just like a single center that's a language school. To give you a quick example of that, I emailed someone at a language school that I went to and study abroad when I went to Brazil many, 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 many years ago. And that lady was like, "Oh my God, I would love to host you in Brazil. Let me know what you need. Let me know what kind of classes you want to take and what kind of experience you want to have, and I can curate something for you." Now, that's just me emailing her, asking her, because I didn't see that they had an official like summer class, fall class for an individual person. They had it for like groups. So I was asking her, like, well, if an individual wanted to come, how could we do it? And she was like, "Oh my God, I would love to do that for you. Let me know if you're interested." So even if you are interested in that and you don't kind of, it's workable. It's workable. But you need to be able to communicate with people. Brazil's a place you need to know some Portuguese. It's not like Portugal where a lot of people speak English. Brazil, English is sort of a business language. So there's a certain um, bracket of people that do know English because English is kind of considered, like I said, a business language. But every day on the streets, honey, you're going to need to know something because they already probably, if you are a Black person, you have your skin working for you as a like a cultural shield. Like people may not automatically assume that you are not Brazilian. However, a friend told me this about going to Nigeria who is Nigerian. She told me that when she goes home, even though she is Nigerian, she is 100% Nigerian, the way that she presents is different than people who live in Nigeria, if that makes sense. So even though people may not assume that you're not Brazilian, they may be kind of looking at you anyway because you may not look like whatever is in the air, whatever dust, you know what I'm trying to say? Like whatever that is, you don't got it. So the language is going to help you blend a little bit, even if you're not a excellent speaker. Um, yes, the effort is appreciated, but also Brazil is just a place, I'm telling you from experience, Brazil is a place that, especially if you go to one of the bigger cities, like, well, all the cities, because even if you were to go to a smaller city, you may have to worry about crime less, but you're going to run across people that speak English less. So, like, you're still going to need the language. But if you're going to go to one of the bigger metropolitan cities like Salvador, Bahia, or Rio de Janeiro or Sao Paulo, yeah, Curitiba, one of these cities, even if you go as far south as Rio Grande do Sul, you want to have some Portuguese under your belt. You want to know how to get the bus. You want to know how to exchange money. I'll tell you from personal experience, when I landed in the Brazilian airport for the first time in Bahia, and I went to exchange a little bit of cash because I was already going to exchange cash later, but I wanted a little bit of cash for the driver that was coming to pick me up. And so I went to the booth and I just tried to get a little bit of money, maybe like 100 real or something. And the guy ripped me off. And I'm looking at him, he looking at me, and we look like cousins. And I just didn't think he would do that to me. And you think he cared? Honey, they don't. I can tell you're not from here. What is it to you? Yeah, I'm about to take 20 off top. I'm about to take 50 off top. And I remember being like irritated because I'm like, oh, my money. But even somebody who studied Portuguese, trying to speak fast and trying to communicate and pull the right words in the right time, they just will look at you like, and I'm still going to rip you off. And there's nothing you can do about it because you don't even know how to tell anybody in my country what I just did to you. And I can tell you're not from here. and I don't care. I got mouths to feed, or I got this thing I want to buy, or I'm going out this weekend, or I'm going out tonight. Thank you. So you just have to, like, it's real. So, as beautiful as the country is, as great as the food that it is, um, culturally rich, music, everything, it's still worth going and it's still worth experiencing. But especially if you're going to go solo, and especially if you're going to go to one of the bigger cities, you just have to know, honey, you need to keep your head on a swivel. You need to be street smart. And having the language is going to help you more than it's going to hurt you, even if you struggle to speak it. Speak. That's a country where you need to speak. Okay? Okay. So, but I still put it on the list because if it hasn't changed, I mean, the US dollar is definitely not as strong as it used to be, but the currency for the US dollar to there is 4 to 1, for Hai to 1 USD. And so your money does stretch. Things are cheaper. Food is, inexpensive because it's in abundance there. And there are a lot of brown people. So you'll feel good. You'll feel at home. It's a completely different lifestyle. Um, they make a point to enjoy life a little bit more. You don't work as hard there. And people are friendly and kind for the most part, unless they're trying to scam you or rob you. So, yeah, I think it's worth putting on the list. Now, I have not been to Asia. I know people that living in Thailand right now. I have friends that I went to school with growing up that went back to the Philippines and became nurses and lived great lives there. I'm trying to think of what else. Um, yeah, so I can't talk to you about Asia or Australia or, Japan or something like that. Right? So these are the countries that I can talk to you about. And I think they're all really great options. And I don't hear enough people talking about them. I hear Belize, I hear Barbados, I hear Panama, I hear Mexico, Portugal, Spain. Oh, one more thing. If you made it to this far in the video, God bless you, because here's the last thing that I want to mention. If you are currently, this was a big sleeper for me. I wish I would have knew earlier. When I found this out, I applied for it and I was literally, I think, like either 1 week or 1 month past the deadline to be approved. And I was like, now this would have been a game changer. Okay, if you are a student, it doesn't matter. Bachelor's, master's, or PhD, doesn't matter which level. If you are currently a student, or if you are 5 years or less from graduation, from when you graduated, and you went to a top university in the United States, like I did twice over, there is something, as long as this administration didn't kill it, there is something called a high potential individual visa. It's like HPVI, HPIV, something like that. Look it up, okay? If you went to like Brown, University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, Harvard, Yale, Columbia is probably on there. Northwestern's on there. UC Berkeley's on there. Stanford's on there. I want to say even UC San Diego's on there. Um, I can't think of all of them right now. Now, the Southern schools, University of Alabama, University of Georgia, Clemson, they ain't on there, honey. Okay, as much as y'all be barking, Georgia dogs, as much as y'all be barking about how great your school is, it's not on the list. I think that says enough. Case closed. But if you went to, ain't no HBCUs on the list. Sorry. But if you went to one of those types of schools, Cambridge, whatever, if you went to one of those types of schools, um, you can apply for something called a high potential individual visa. And what it means is, I was so mad I found about this so late. You can go to the UK, which is arguably one of the toughest places to get a visa without a job or without being a student. You can go to the UK, okay? England, Scotland. And not that it's the Holy Grail, but damn, I wish I would have known this. You can go there for 2 years with just a bachelor's. Bachelor's, master's is 2 years, and I think if you have a PhD, you can go for up to 3, I think. You can go for 2 years no job. It's called a high potential individual visa. Now you have to pay the fees, whatever it costs, but it's called that because you have a high potential of gaining full-time employment. So basically, if you graduate from one of these top institutions, we actually want you to work here. You're going to help our economy. So you can come here for 2 years on a visa without a job, which is unheard of in the UK. The UK left the EU. Brexit was a big deal because they didn't want people coming. It was like, too many of y'all. We don't want it. Bye. That's what they said anyway. Okay. But the HPVI visa, or the HPI visa, means that you can go there for 2 years, and I think you have the ability to extend, without a job, which means you can like go take your Airbnb money, get set up, and basically hit the ground running because you're considered someone who's a high potential individual to gain full-time employment. So that visa can also turn into a work visa. And everybody knows when you get there and you're meeting people and you're networking, and how many US companies have you like London bases? A lot. Even small firms like PR firms, marketing firms, media firms, telecommunications companies, media companies. I work in media. I just wish somebody would have told me this. And I literally applied, and I think I was like 1 month past my deadline of 5 years since I graduated. So you have up to 5 years after you finish with your degree to apply for this. And baby, I wish I would have known that. Okay. So if you made it to this video, that alone was worth the 40 minutes of watching me to learn about it. Tell everybody you know, apply, because some people in this country know, and a lot of people in this country don't know. And a lot of brown people don't go to those universities, but the ones that do, baby, there are opportunities for you, and it can open up a whole world. Like, man, I just wish I would have known that. The schools I went to have alumni chapters in London, and I was already networking with them and everything. And then I found out about this visa, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. I can and I can make my Europe life happen. And baby girl, I missed the deadline. I thought about writing the office and being like, hey, I'm 1 month past the deadline. Would you extend it for me anyway? And it could have worked, but I didn't do it. So I will tell everybody, look up the HPVI, apply, and take your butts abroad and just give yourself that experience. You know, being in London for me, I didn't explore it as much as I could have because I wasn't there that long. I was just there a couple days. But I went during the Notting Hill Carnival, and just seeing all the people that came out and the culture. And I already told you I lived in Barbados, and when you go to Notting Hill Carnival, Bajans have a huge representation there because of the relations between the UK and Barbados. And I don't know, it just felt good. And I was like, yeah, yeah. Um, but I also am not under the guise that London is a paradise or that England is a paradise. They were colonizers too. And at some point, they draw that line like they all do. So let's just say that, okay? But those are the different countries that I want to share with you guys. This was probably a two-parter that I put into one, but I'm going to end there before we get to 1 hour. And I pray that you learned a lot in this video. And if y'all want more content like this from me, let me know, because like I said, I was talking to somebody and they were like, dang, how do you know all this? And I was like, oh, I researched, and I take it for granted. But this is another topic that I absolutely love talking about. Okay. So until next time, ciao.